Coming up on today's episode of the SaaS School podcast.
In a lot of situations, you'll realize that if you don't do it, there's a serious risk of you actually losing the job, right? Because you're not knowing the
Ladies and gentlemen, let's explore how growth, product, and customer success work together across SaaS companies. Welcome to the SaaS School podcast. And here's your host, Abhinav Arora. Abhinav, the stage is yours.
Howdy, good folks. Welcome to yet another episode of the SaaS School podcast. Today, I have with me the Vice President of Marketing at MoEngage. MoEngage is one of the startups that Indian ecosystem is proud of because these guys have built in India and done really well in India. One of the category leaders in their category of push notifications and customer engagement. Twitter is abuzz with entrepreneurship and how you should start up, how you should do 0 to 1 journey. There have been countless books written about it. Y Combinator has been ruling that space for the longest time. But there's very little knowledge about, cool, you've started up, but how do you make it a scale up? And people who are young and rebellious, kind of like the breed who often starts up, they don't give much value to scaling up. But the truth is, as Kunal Shah recently said, that India is not new to startups. India is new to scaling up. Howdy.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So something that I just learned is that you've been a salesperson before you ended up in marketing. Sure. And that explains the aggressiveness because, folks, Ashwin believes that there are two kind of marketers. He's a salesperson, so he's been aggressive and he was aggressive about his point of view. And he's also talking about kind of marketers who are aggressive, who like to take risks, who like to do things that aren't really done before. There are no books about it. They don't follow the playbook essentially. And then there's the fad of data-driven marketing. The guys who want to cover their asses. What subscribes you to such a point of view?
I think over the last 10 years or so, there's just so much data points available that I do feel that sometimes as marketers, we end up getting lost in it. And there's this tendency that, hey, we should be measuring everything and tying everything to sort of concrete business results and all of that, which I think is fine. I mean, data has its uses, but end of the day, marketing is also about bringing about a more emotional response in your audience, right? It's also about things which you can't measure. It's both an art and a science. Things have sort of skewed so much towards the data part of it that there is this element of creativity. There's this element of really trying to understand your customer, even talking to them, and the whole sort of art of marketing is sort of getting lost. Even today, for instance, when when I'm hiring people in the team and I ask questions, you will be amazed at how many people straight off jump into it. For example, if I ask a question around, can you describe a buyer journey? Everyone jumps into, awareness stage and consideration stage and, different sort of...
Google images search will give you that.
They'll get all of that. And I say, look, that's the way you've defined it, but that may not necessarily be your buyer's journey. I mean, do you understand their trigger points? Do you understand the emotional aspects of it? Do you understand why they do make these decisions? Have you really spoken to your customers? Do you really understand them? And a lot of them, you'll be amazed at how many people don't know or struggle to answer these questions. They are all comfortable with explaining about CTRs and impression shares and rates, reach and A/B testing and all of that, which is good. I'm not saying that.
That's what any typical blog would tell you.
Yeah, but
how to digital marketing 101.
Exactly. And then when I ask questions like, all right, let's say if you're a content writer and I ask questions like, okay, do you understand the trigger points of your customers? And I think the answers are very superficial. It's very clear that there's no depth in those answers, right? And that's where I feel that a lot of us have sort of gone too much towards the data-driven side of marketing, and I don't think we're actually focusing a lot more on this part of it.
So what are you signaling? Are you signaling that the guys who are reading the books and following the definition of click-through rate, impression rates, and there are way too many tools, you guys are contributing to the ecosystem?
We are in the ecosystem. Guilty as charged. We sell a tool as well, which does all of that.
Which gives you... Are you telling me that these guys are young in their careers? These guys are afraid to screw up their careers? And the guys like you, whatever knowledge that you've developed in your head, the customer pain points, the customer triggers, how to evoke a reaction, how to evoke a response. You have to do the drill of 5-6 years to do that, to get to
not really. I think there's several reasons for that, right? I think one is I don't think a lot of marketers actually spend enough time talking to customers. And this is especially true from a B2B enterprise sort of perspective, right? Where access to customers is not always easy.
Right.
And if you're selling a consumer brand, you could just walk out. And if you're selling, let's say, an energy drink, you could just walk out and talk to people who are consuming those energy drinks, right? But in especially in an enterprise sort of a sector, it's not very easy. I mean, access to customers is a bit hard. I understand that, but that doesn't mean that you just go back to data and start trying to figure things out, right? So I think one of them is that. The other part of it also is that, I mean, marketing costs money, right?
Yeah.
And it's not as visible as sales when you say, look, I hired 5 salespeople, I'm getting X amount of revenue, right? So that's a fairly straightforward equation that way. And as a young marketer, when you're sort of, asking for money and you're asking for budget and you have to justify that budget, a lot of people are not comfortable with the fact that this may not be directly attributable or directly tied to business results. And I think that's where a little bit of hesitancy comes from as well. There needs to be a bit more sort of awareness even amongst your founders and CFOs saying that, look, marketing is art and science, and it's very hard to sort of attribute everything that you do in marketing. And at the same time, I think even the young marketers also needs to take a little bit of risk and tell and try to educate. Look, it's not always straightforward, right? I mean, you've got to take some risks. You've got to be comfortable with experimenting. You've got to be comfortable with not knowing how this ties into your business results. I think you'll see more and more. I mean, Freshworks is a great example, right? I mean, they do all of this. They picked an enemy, they picked Salesforce, and they went ahead and they try to gate crash Dreamforce, and they do all of that, which is great. I mean, that's also marketing, right? I mean, I'm sure people sitting in Freshworks is not going to think that, I did this huge billboard outside, outside Dreamforce. What's my ROI on it? I'm sure they're not going to be thinking about that.
Cool. In very crude words, balls. So tell me a few. I mean, I totally. You can in fact talk us through the ballsy campaigns of Freshworks and any ballsy campaigns that you've pulled off that probably didn't have the approval of the management or didn't have approval of your peers, but it was creative enough, and you think it led to the results. Or I mean, how does it function when you do something ballsy and it's not attributable?
So I'll give you an example, right? So for instance, I think when I joined MoEngage for the first time, Ravi, who's the CEO, he and I were sort of discussing, and we said, okay, let's do a user conference. And at that point in time, I remember that we had like an X amount of budget for it. I think it was like $10,000, $14,000 or whatever for the small user conference. And then when we actually started executing this, it became $50,000, $60,000, $75,000, which was a fair bit of money back then when we were Series A and we were counting every penny. At that point in time, I wasn't even sure what workout would even mean, right? I mean, I wasn't even sure how success would look like if I do this.
You managed to rope in a budget of about 50-ish lakhs.
Yeah, somewhere around. I mean, we overshot that, so that's a different conversation.
60, 70 lakhs.
And I remember having this conversation with Ravi as well, saying, look, it seems like a risk, and this is something,
Can't roll back. But tell me, what was the concept of the event? I understand, like, conference is what a typical Google search will tell you. I understand how conference is held. What did you guys do differently? What was the event?
Yeah, so we did a few things differently. One, we said, we are not going to be the thought leaders. We are not going to teach people anything, right? We are going to just call practitioners, so your peers, I mean peers in the growth marketing, product management sort of community, and we are going to let them share their experiences. So no sales, no thought leadership, and vendor
as a VP marketing, you were just like, guys, no sales people invited.
No sales, absolutely. We were very clear on that. We were very clear on that.
Okay.
I said no sales, no fluff. It's going to be peer-led, so it's going to be real sort of insights, experiential insights, not just someone who's going to come in theoretically and give you some
workshop,
gyan and all of that stuff, right? That's the premise we went with. We said, this is how we're going to start with, and people loved it. That was sort of the first one that happened, and then we did a lot of those. We went to Jakarta, we did it in Berlin, we did it in the US, we did it in Vietnam.
What's the event called? It's
called #growth.
And same name everywhere.
Same name everywhere.
So this is your IP sort of.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it can be trademarked, but because growth is a very sort of a generic.
No, but #growth is associated with MoEngage.
It's ours.
You spoke about Freshworks taking on
Salesforce. Yeah.
Salesforce.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
So they basically picked an enemy, which is Salesforce. And I think in marketing, that's important. I mean, you pick an enemy, and especially if that enemy is much larger than yours, and they've already done the hard work of establishing the category and building the brand name, and you basically go head on head and say that, look, I'm them, but a better alternative types, right? And then they went after the most prized property of Salesforce, which is Dreamforce, right? Because that's like the biggest thing that happens as far as marketing in Salesforce is concerned. Like 100,000, 200,000 people all designed into the town, and it's they just take over the town, right? Then they went and and then they said, okay, that's where we're going to fight, not on our battlefield. We're going to take the battle to them on their battlefield, right? And people love it because it just grabs attention. Right?
But what did they do?
Target audience. I think the last time they actually had these huge sort of blips floating around, and they came up with this
air balloons,
fail force campaign, sort of.
While Dreamforce was happening.
While Dreamforce was happening, so they had these huge air balloons, and they said, they had like a very Star Wars themed thing where they said, "May the Force be with you," and like a fail force, right? Yeah, "May the Force be with you" stuff. Yeah, it was good. It was fun, right? I mean, it got a lot of eyeballs, and it's not like they're going to say that, I did that event and I got like 100 million in revenue. You're never going to have a direct contribution.
The fact that we're talking about it today did capture some mind
share.
share.
All your target audience is there, right? Because you're going after Salesforce customer anyway. So you've got them there, and having that sort of gumption to pull it off, that sort of cheekiness is really good. I mean, that's marketing.
So where do the data-driven marketers kind of lack? For the longest time living in Bangalore ecosystem, and when companies like Mu Sigma, they help you make better decisions, and retail analytics is coming in. So much analytics that's coming in marketing. How do people become ballsy?
See, I think how to be a bit more bold. I mean, as a person, that's something that you've got.
Is that an internal journey?
It's a bit of an internal thing. It's not like, I mean, nobody can come and make you
ballsy,
right? I mean, it's not like an energy drink, and you just drink it and then you become. I mean, it's not. I mean, you've got to have that confidence and say, look, that this is something that I think is going to work. It may or may not, but that's okay, and we'll live with it. And see, one of the things with marketing is because the output of your work is very visible, everyone's going to have an opinion, whether it's good or bad, whether it works or doesn't work, doesn't matter.
Correct.
Every
so you
need
to have that thick skin.
You need to have the thick skin and say, look, this is just what it is. And end of the day, I as a marketer, it's on me, right? I mean, if it works or doesn't work, it's on me. For me, the mental model that I use for my thing is, what happens if I don't do this?
Nothing happens.
Exactly. And
I mean, the needle doesn't move.
Yeah, right. And then I think about it, saying, look, what's the worst that could happen if I do this? And what could happen if I don't do this? Right? And that sort of helps you, because in a lot of cases, the potential bad impact that's sort of weighing in your mind, right?
The fear
starts looking smaller. Okay. When you start asking these questions of yourself, saying, I mean, like, kya ho yaar? I mean, what's the worst that can happen? Worst thing kya hoga? I mean, you lose your job, right? Okay, I mean, fine. I mean, if you're smart enough, you'll find another job. I mean, currently the market is so good that you'll find a job. And the second thing is, what happens if you don't do it? In a lot of situations, you'll realize that if you don't do it, there's a serious risk of you actually losing the job. Right? Because you're not moving the needle anyway. Right? Because you're not moving the needle anyway, right? Yeah. So 6 months, 12 months on the line, there's a risk that you'll lose the job. So that's the way I look at it from a mental model perspective.
That was a good one. Do you have any closing thoughts?
I think, look, we are in very exciting times now. I mean, there's just so much opportunity out there to go out and experiment and then really be part of something that's new, that's sort of redefining this whole ecosystem. And so, I mean, I would say that would be my closing thoughts. Just go. There's just so much opportunity these days. Just go out there and then experiment and take those opportunities. You might fail, but that's okay.
Have fun. Wow, shit. The background just vanished. But cool. I think we can. It was good timing. We can edit it.
Yeah.
But crazy. Cool. Awesome. We'll figure this out.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Yeah.